Wizard of the Pigeons is a 1986 novel by Megan Lindholm, who actually publishes under the more popular pseudonym of Robin Hobb. This is an urban fantasy, though, set in Seattle following a homeless wizard, in particular a product of the 80s, where the veterans of the Vietnam War, had a traumatizing experience and returned home to scorn and a good chance at ending up on the streets. The protagonist is simply Wizard, one of the last, if not the last, on the streets of Seattle, which fits with the French title, The Last Magician. A cast of intriguing, interesting characters. Sylvester is a mummy whispering stories, Rasputin also from the streets, as well as Cassie. The story revolves around a wizard's past, and while there are a few ideas people have about it, in reality it's largely obscured, and even Wizard has forgotten it. While not Tolkien-esque, knowing Hobb is a fan of Liber, she likely was inspired by some of his Our Lady of Darkness, but that's a guess, as that's kind of considered, an early urban fantasy. The choice of having a homeless character as protagonist in an urban environment is apt, and a nice change of pace as well, with it getting the themes of poverty, PTSD, and addiction. Also, a flock of pigeons as a familiar is clever and very appropriate. The magic is very authentic, too, harnessed by living by specific and somewhat odd rules. For example, you see this in another urban fantasy like Hiram Woolley by D.J. Butler and Aaron Michael Ritchie, where authentic magic is gone for rather than big explosion, and definitely not hard magic, whatever that means. So anyways, one of these rules, for example, though, is no sex, which does show up as a problem, right? Because that is tied into this spiritual power. The weakness is having, more obvious magical antagonists, which is left really vague. That's mostly fine, as Wizard fights himself more than anything. It's an interesting concept about morality. And I do commend Hobb on her versatility. Not every author has versatility, and I was reading, actually, Heartbeat's Flight at the same time as this, and have read the first Farseer book, and Heartbeat's Flight will be reviewed here shortly, but they're each of a different style. And overall, it's a fine story about identity, but I just don't really care. I wasn't really entertained much, which has been my problem with Hobb books, all three of the ones I've read. So, anyways, I don't know if I'll actually continue at this point, because I tried the variety. I tried her epic fantasy, I tried her more laid-back, sword and sorcery-esque, kind of more heroic fantasy. I tried her urban fantasy, and I have not cared much at all since I read any of them. So, oops, I think someone will enjoy this, though. Anyways, Liam from Liam's Lyceum. I'll catch you next time.